Before I get to speak about the main topic of this particular video about Jarrod Bowen in England, how many of you would have predicted or could have predicted what has happened during this international break? Now, unconfirmed reports suggest that Crycensio Summerville has picked up yet another hamstring injury. Now, I've got to really stress these are unconfirmed reports, but the player didn't take part in midweek training session, which was to introduce Igor and Songutu Magasa to the rest of the squad who are not on international duty. If you go and have a look at the Rush Green video, you unfortunately won't see any sign of Crycensio Summerville taking part. If he is out for a period of time, it's going to be a crushing blow because without him, West Ham would not have won the game against Nottingham Forest last weekend. Now, like I say, these reports are unconfirmed, but as soon as I find out any more, of course, I'll let you know. But what has been confirmed is that Niklas Fullkrug has returned early from the German squad with apparently a slight calf injury. Again, another calf injury. Now, it's not yet known the extent of this injury, and he's returned to Rush Green purely as a precaution. Now, even a minor calf injury would normally mean being out for maybe a couple of weeks, which means it's highly unlikely that Fullkrug will be available for the game against Spurs next weekend, and it's quite possible he will also miss the game against Crystal Palace the following weekend. Now, clearly this is not great. It's not ideal, but it's typical of West Ham. The transfer window has just closed. The international break is on. And yet again, we suffer with injuries. Now, many will argue, well, this is the price you pay for not having a full squad. But as I demonstrated only the other week, that the squad, it's quite a sizable squad. And if you include the younger players in there, the likes of Callum Marshall, etc., then we've got about 26, 27 players. But I get it. You don't bring in a striker that's fit and you rely on the likes of Niklas Fullkrug and Callum Wilson, then you're on a hiding to nothing. Look, the consolation, if any, is that Guilherme is back in full training. He did feature in the Rush Green video during the week, and he's back and he's ready, so he will be available. And of course, Callum Marshall is continuing his progress. He did extremely well for the Northern Ireland team during midweek, and he will be another player that will be available for Graham Potter when we return to training after the international break. Okay, let's get on to the main topic. Now, before that, if you're new to the West Ham Voice, or if you've watched the West Ham Voice before, but yet to become a subscriber, please do subscribe. All the content is free. You can become a member for additional content, but the general content for this channel is always free. Right, let's talk about Jarrod Bowen. Now, in his post-match press conference after the game, the statement made by Thomas Tuchel on Noni Madueke was pretty much damning, for me anyway, of Jarrod Bowen's chances of getting a spot in the England squad for next year's World Cup finals. Now, Tuchel, he said about Madueke, sometimes the player lacks a bit of concentration, especially in counter-attacking. But if he pushes himself, which I'm sure he can be a very important player for England. And given that Saka is currently injured, Madueke needs to step up. Now, for me, that's pretty evident that Thomas Tuchel has made up his mind as to who's going to be the backup to Bukayo Saka in the England squad for next year's World Cups. That's, of course, if both players are available. If you ask any pundit right now to give you an honest assessment of Jarrod Bowen's chances of making that England World Cup squad, I'm not so sure many would say that he will be a part of it. From what I can see at this moment in time, there are 3 contenders for 2 spots in England's attack on the right-hand side. And these three players are obviously Bukayo Saka, Noni Madueke, and Jarrod Bowen. Now, whilst Saka is currently out injured, Thomas Tuchel has called Jarrod Bowen back into the squad. So it's evident he's third choice. And when Saka is back, it's highly unlikely that Madueke will be dropped. So it seems to me pretty obvious that the two players to compete on the right side of attack for England in the future are Saka and Madueke. Now, no one can dispute Saka's contribution in an England shirt, but it's the competition between Bowen and Madueke that is the main topic of the day. In his 44 appearances for England, Saka has scored 12 goals with 10 assists. No doubting that he deserves his place in the squad. But it's the stats between Bowen and Madueke that determines, or should determine, who would be the more worthy of the two to get that spot to back Saka next summer. Bowen has made 16 appearances for England with just the 1 goal and 1 assist. But of those 16 appearances, only six have been as a starter. Madueke's 7 appearances, actually now it's 8 if you include the Andorra game. Excuse me. If you include the Andorra game, it's 8. 4 of those have been in the starting lineup. And yet, apart from pass accuracy, Bowen's stats are far superior to those of Madueke's when in an England shirt. Now, if you add to that, Madueke has not made an assist or a goal in the Premier League since January. And in that time, Jarrod Bowen has been involved in 14 goals. Anyway, in the Bowen'S against Andorra on Saturday, it was Madueke who got the nod. And despite Thomas Tuchel making 5 substitutions throughout that game, it was Madueke who finished the game, with no sign of Jarrod Bowen getting anywhere near the field of play. So why is Jarrod Bowen being overlooked? Well, for many West Ham fans, the answer is pretty obvious. Jarrod Bowen doesn't play for one of the glamorous top 6 or big 6 teams in the Premier League. Hence, those who represent the likes of Chelsea, Arsenal, etc., are always going to get the nod in advance of a player like Jarrod Bowen, who plays only for little old West Ham. Is that a fair assessment? Well, every England manager has always made the grand gesture, the grand statement that a player gets selected for England on merit. So let's compare the 2024-25 stats of those three players, Saka, Madueke, and Bowen. Now, in just about every single attacking area last season in the Premier League, Jarrod Bowen has actually stood out head and shoulders above both players. And that's when Bowen was playing for a team who was struggling in the Premier League, as opposed to the likes of Chelsea and Arsenal last season. Bowen scored 13 goals, double that of Saka and Madueke. And I know you're going to argue, well, hang on a minute, Saka was injured, but Bowen was injured as well for a number of games too. That's another thing. Bowen is rarely injured. You know, you can rely on him to be injury-free. Anyway, 13 goals. That was double of Saka and Madueke. His number of assists were 3 less than Saka's, but double that of Madueke's. He had 5 times more shots on target than Madueke did, and he's had almost 8 times as many touches in the opponent's box to that of Madueke. And he was far closer to Saka's pass completion percentage rate than that, again, of Madueke's. He created more chances than either of the two players, and his pass accuracy percentage rate was again better than Madueke's. So in all, when it comes to being selected for England based on merit and form, it's pretty evident that it should be Jarrod Bowen who deserves to continue being selected over Madueke as the backup to Bukayo Saka. Now, I don't really know what else Jarrod Bowen can really do in a West Ham shirt. He's got to remain in contention for me for an England place. But look, he was part of Thomas Tuchel's squad earlier in the year, and he even featured in World Cup qualifiers against the likes of Latvia and others. With 16 caps and a goal to his name, he should be seen as a valuable option in the England attacking lineup, especially when competition is so fierce. Bowen himself has said that this is a really big year for him, both at club level and international level, with the World Cup on the horizon. He's focused on showing his consistency at West Ham, and he's shown that to the fans time and time again. We all know Bowen's strengths, and we can see them week in, week out. He's got great acceleration and movement. His work rate is second to none. Unlike Madueke, who Tuchel suggested switches off, especially when in counter-attack, there is none of that with Bowen. He's always on the alert, always on the lookout for making use of the ball when it breaks for West Ham. He's a clinical finisher, and he's demonstrated that time and time again. He can offer England something more than Madueke can as well, because not only can he operate from the right side of attack, he can also operate in the centre as well. Look, I think it will be a major blow for Bowen if he was not to make the England squad next summer. He's 28 years of age now. He'll be 29 when the finals are happening next summer. And this might just be his last chance to get into a World Cup squad. He wasn't in the 2022 squad, despite having played a number of games in the UEFA Nations League leading up to that tournament. He did regain his England squad after the World Cup. He regained them in the Euro qualifiers in 2023, but he only got to play again in a number of international friendlies in 2024, and then thereafter the few World Cup qualifiers. We've got another World Cup qualifier away to Serbia this coming Tuesday evening. It's going to be a much sterner test than that of Andorra. I would like to think that Tuchel has been saving Bowen for that game, but I don't know if that's really true. It's going to be interesting to see whether he starts or whether he even comes off the bench on Tuesday evening. If he doesn't, then I hope that he continues, Tuchel, to monitor Bowen's progress in the Premier League and not just favouring the likes of Madueke just because of the club he plays for. In contrast, to completely dispel my myth that players only get selected from certain clubs, after Adam Wharton's withdrawal from the England squad due to injury, Thomas Tuchel wanted another central midfielder in training sessions. And apparently, Declan Rice and Jarrod Bowen recommended Lewis Orford, who was already at St. George's Park with the under-20 squad. He played in the game against Italy on Friday evening where England lost 2-1. So Orford has actually been training with the senior England squad throughout the week, which is a massive thumbs up to the 19-year-old who's only just been loaned out for the season to Stevenage. But this isn't the first time that Tuchel has brought players in from the junior England squads. Back in March, he invited Taylor Harwood-Bellis, Adam Wharton himself, and Liam Delap from the under-21 squad to train with the senior team. Now, look, I wouldn't read too much into the wind-up stories that are going around at the moment that Potter doesn't see a talent in the player, and yet Tuchel does. Let's remember, if the story is accurate, it was Bowen and Rice who made the recommendation to Tuchel to bring young Orford into the senior squad. And it wasn't Tuchel himself that instigated the idea. Tuchel often brings in additional players to bolster the number of players in training. But it was, let's not, it was a great opportunity for Orford to make his mark. And let's hope that certainly bodes well for the future. Can you imagine Lewis Orford being the natural successor to Declan Rice in the West Ham team and also in the England team? Why ever not? Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you all again very soon.